Alright people, how's it going? Scotty. So I thought I'd do this video on the American Southern people, and I came across a number of the characteristics in this book called The Politically Incorrect Guide to the South and Why It Will Rise Again. And I thought it was really interesting, just reading a number of the characteristics. It just sounds so picture perfect to what Scotland is like. So, there's so many opinions, of course, from different people, from people who come from the American North and obviously have their own opinions of what Southerners are like, and there's American Southerners that might say, okay, that's not exactly like us, or there will be Southerners that will say, that pretty much is what we're like. And it'd be interesting to find out the different opinions from people to what your view of the American South is like anyway. I mean, because I know that people have their different opinions. I mean, it's the same in Scotland. Everyone has their own opinion of what Scotland is like. But from this book, I don't know whether this is a general view of what the South is like. But if this is the case, then, it just shows how strong Scotland is throughout the American South today. And I'll quickly touch upon the characteristics. The first characteristic is don't flaunt your advantages. You might have an Ivy League college degree. A lot of Southerners went to Princeton too. Virginia Woodrow Wilson went from heading the university to becoming President of the United States. But you won't win any points at the general store by telling everyone. I don't know if that's specifically true. Again, your opinion. It'd be actually nice to hear what your opinion of that is. Scotland is a very humble nation. It's not the type of nation that would go about flaunting what they have. They're more of a type of people who play themselves down and praise more what other people do, or praise more of what other people have or achieve. And that's the way the Scottish people are. So it'd be interesting to find out whether a number of Southerners are like this, because that is a very Scottish trait. The second one, everyone deserves respect until they demonstrate they don't deserve it. In the South, children are taught to listen to their elders. Donald Trump may preach that power and money are all a matter in life, but Southerners know better. They know that everyone is made in God's image and deserves consideration and respect. It would be interesting to find out what you have to say in this, what your opinion is of the American Southerners, or like if you live in the American South, it'd be interesting to see what you have to say in this, whether you're like this or a number of people. I'm not entirely sure. Again, this is very much a Scottish trait, because in Scotland we strongly believe everyone, deserves respect. Of course, we'll judge them by how they react, whether they're going to be arrogant or ignorant. They tend to judge people based upon their characteristic, and we'll respect everybody. That's why we're a very friendly nation. And again, this whole thing in the South, children are taught to listen to their elders. That's very much true. I mean, I don't know whether that's something common through all society or whatever, but in Scotland that is very much true, that you tend to find that our children are taught to listen to their elders. That's where they learn from. So it'll be interesting to find out what your opinion is of the American South, because that's very much the way Scotland is like. We believe everyone deserves consideration and respect in that sense. The third one, titles are still important in the South too. Southern boys still call their elders sir or madam. You refer to a man as Mr. last name, or Miss last name, until you're given permission to use a first name. And we like to use our military titles even if we're only Kentucky colonels. Well, see, that's the thing. I don't know about the whole colonel thing, right? And I'm not entirely sure about the whole madam or whatever. We don't really use that word specifically. But again, this relates in characteristic to Scotland, because see, when I went to school, it was always Miss or Mister, or it was most commonly Sir. You know, when it was a guy teacher we had, we would always refer to him as Sir. That's what we would call him, Sir. And we would also use respectively the Mister or Miss last name, especially when it comes to friends' parents and stuff like that. I know I did, and I know a number of other people did, because we see it as respective, you know. It's more mannerly, if that makes sense, and I think that's the way Scotland mostly is. The fourth one, everyone else matters before you do in the south. Don't ever impulsively reach for the last biscuit in the basket. Southerners insist that guests take the last biscuit, even if there are more in the oven. Don't ever head out the door without holding it open for the next person. Don't ever rush an elevator. It is simple politeness to think of others before yourself in the south. Again, that is a very, very Scottish trait. Because, I mean, it's not like Scotland's the be-all and end-all, but this is a case of Scotland at one point had basically occupied and had colonised the entire American South. So you can see why this relates to Scotland. I think what's shown, if this is true, right? If this is true, it's showing that what resides in the United States today, in the American South specifically, is that the traits of Scotland still resides strong throughout the American South today, and that's why I would ask yourself, of course, because it would be really interesting to find out what you have to say in your general opinion. I mean, us Scots always put others first before ourselves. We've always been that type of people. We're a very generous, giving type of people. We are a people who will treat guests like royalty. We'll treat guests that they are first before ourselves. We'll always put others before ourselves, and that's the way Scotland is. It's a very welcoming country, a very welcoming type of people who are generous and giving, and I would say that's very much the way Scotland is. It gives off a very good impression. It's always had a very good image for that, and a lot of people say the American South is friendly. And again, obviously there are other people who will state their opinion upon the American South. There are other people who will say differently about the American South, but it would be interesting to find out what you have to say yourself in your general opinion. What is your opinion? Fifth one here. It says, be helpful. See cows out in the road, stop it at the nearest farmhouse and offer to help herd them back behind the fence. See a lady standing on the side of the road staring at her flat tyre, stop and change it. Even if you are in a suit or on your way to a meeting, Southerners always understand the necessity of good manners. Well, that's the thing again, this relates to my own country, Scotland. They tend to help strangers regardless of whether they know them or not, you know, it doesn't really matter whether they know them. It's one of those things that is very mannerly, and you'll find that in Glasgow especially. The next one, it says, be friendly. Nothing's more southern than a sunny smile and an offer of friendly conversation or help. Well, again, in Scotland you'll find people talk to one another whether they know them or not. They'll smile at one another, they'll say hi to one another, you know, they're very a friendly type of people who'll wave. You know, there's been times I've been out and I've had my camcorder and I've recorded and I've just not noticed. You know, I've not noticed at all. I was busy recording a building and somebody's waved and they've to more or less say hi or that, you know. I mean, that's the type of place Scotland is. It's a friendly country. They acknowledge you're there. It's not a case of they'll just walk right by you or you know, they won't bother smiling or they don't acknowledge you. They actually acknowledge you for you being there. They'll acknowledge you if you open the door. They'll say thanks and stuff like that. The other one, it says, ask, don't demand. In the South, if you're pushy, you're written off as a Yankee. Right? People in the south have a long depended on neighbours, so asking favours is natural if it's done politely, but if you're rude and aggressive, it'll backfire. Again, it's one of these things that in Scotland, to relate to that, Scotland is a country where it's very polite and friendly and mannerly, that we tend to say things and ask. The last one, it says, use the right words, please, thank you, yes madam, yes sir. Most southerners still end telephone conversations with customer service representatives with a friendly thank you madam, I appreciate it. Customer service representatives in India might be baffled, but southerners won't change their ways to accommodate a little thing like globalisation. Well, you do tend to find that people here in Scotland very much stick to the way they are. You know, they're very much like that. They won't change or adapt their ways. They are pretty much straightforward. They'll always be proud of who they are as a people. I would reckon this is the way the American Southern people are. Again, if this relates to the way the American Southern people are, it does show that the way culture is and the way things are today in the American South, if this remains true, then it pretty much shows that, you know, it remains strong that how much Scotland is still resides in throughout the American South today. It'd be interesting to find out what you have to say. So yes, I hope you've enjoyed this video, and maybe you found that interesting to see what the American Southerners are like, even if you're not from America at all. But I think the type of people who would best be able to judge are people that live in America, whether they're American Northerners, they've probably travelled to the South, or perhaps lived in the South. I'd like to hear their opinion, and I would obviously like to hear the opinion of those who live in the American South, whether they have those characteristics, because like I say, at one point in history the Scots had more or less occupied the South. They had fought and colonised the entire South. The American South at one point was very much Scottish. I would love nothing more than to go to America and the different parts and experience, not just to see the buildings and places, but it's mostly for the people. You know, I love the American people and I would love to see the culture, and I've never been to America, I can't judge. You know, I can only take what, you know, Southerners or those that I come across who are friendly towards me, and it's very hard to judge because if you don't live in the society, you can't really speak for yourself. Talk to you later.